Chisholm Obesai was the kind of child who never asked for much. She was quiet, always watching the world from the corners of rooms, rarely heard but always present. From a young age, it was clear she wasn't like other children, sickly, small, and constantly in and out of hospitals. Her condition made her body weak, but her mind was sharp. While other children played outside, Chisholm read everything she could get her hands on. Yet in her own home, none of that mattered. Her parents, Ebra and Chuka Obesai, didn't hide their disappointment. Their son, Tchukwu, was the golden child, the healthy one, the pride of the family. Every achievement of his was celebrated with joy. Every birthday, school event, or even mistake he made was handled with love. But when it came to Chisholm, the air grew colder. They said things like, "You're too fragile, you'll never survive this world," or worse, "We didn't ask for this kind of child." Chisholm Obesai was the kind of child who never asked for much. She was quiet, always watching the world from the corners of rooms, rarely heard but always present. From a young age, it was clear she wasn't like other children, sickly, small, and constantly in and out of hospitals. Her condition made her body weak, but her mind was sharp. While other children played outside, Chisholm read everything she could get her hands on. Yet in her own home, none of that mattered. Her parents, Ebra and Chuka Obesai, didn't hide their disappointment. Their son, Tchukwu, was the golden child, the healthy one, the pride of the family. Every achievement of his was celebrated with joy. Every birthday, school event, or even mistake he made was handled with love. But when it came to Chisholm, the air grew colder. They said things like, "You're too fragile, you'll never survive this world," or worse, "We didn't ask for this kind of child." Chisholm knew early that if she was going to survive, it would be by her own hands. Her parents never believed in her, so she stopped trying to impress them. While Tchukwu lived loudly, Chisholm lived in the shadows, quiet, focused, and hungry for something more. She taught herself how to code from free online videos, read late into the night using a borrowed tablet, and applied for every scholarship she could find. And when one came through, she didn't tell anyone. She simply smiled to herself and kept moving. She started freelancing secretly, writing blog posts, designing websites, translating documents, anything she could manage from her room. She used fake names online, afraid her parents would find out and take control of her money. Every naira she earned, she saved in a hidden account. Sometimes she worked through pain, her body shaking, but she never stopped. She knew that in a house where she was treated like a ghost, her work was her voice. Her parents didn't notice. They thought she was wasting time online. Tchukwu mocked her often, saying she was just pretending to be busy. But Chisholm didn't argue. She kept her head down and her heart open. Her dream wasn't just to escape, it was bigger than that. She wanted to start an NGO for girls like her, girls who were ignored, forgotten, unloved, girls who never heard the words, "You matter." The idea came from her own pain, but it grew into purpose. Every time her parents walked past her without a word, she worked harder. Every time they praised Tchukwu for doing the bare minimum, she reminded herself that real success didn't need an audience. Her small room became her office, her classroom, her battlefield. And in that silence, she built something they couldn't see. She bought herself a second-hand laptop, paid for it in installments from her freelancing jobs. She printed out motivational quotes and taped them to her wall. Not for show, but to remind herself that she wasn't what they said she was. She was more. She had nothing handed to her. No encouragement, no comfort, no help. But she built herself anyway, brick by brick,
Woord by woord,
job by job. She didn't wait to be rescued. She became her own rescue. And while no one in that house clapped for her, Chisholm knew her time was coming. She just had to keep going quietly, carefully, until the world would finally hear her story. At 23, Chisholm's body began to send her warnings she couldn't ignore. The tiredness was deeper, the pain sharper, and her breathing shorter. After weeks of hiding it, she finally went to the hospital alone. The doctor's face told her everything before he even spoke. Her condition had worsened. It wasn't a question of if, it was a matter of when. There was a surgery that could help, maybe give her more time, maybe even a real chance at life. But it was expensive, far beyond what she had saved. She went home that day and sat across from her parents with her medical report in her hands. Her voice shook as she explained, but she still spoke with hope. All she asked was for their help, a little support, something. But her father didn't even look at the paper. He just said, "Let God decide. We're not wasting money on you." Her mother remained quiet, eyes fixed on her phone. No questions, no concern. Just silence. Chisholm sat there frozen, not because of what they said, but because deep down, she expected it. That same week, Tachukwa's wedding plans were in full swing. The house was loud with music and laughter. Boxes of expensive wine arrived. New outfits were bought. A wedding planner came and went. No one mentioned Chisholm's health. No one asked how she was feeling. It was like her illness didn't exist, or worse, like she didn't exist at all. She watched them pour money into decorations, food, and photo shoots, knowing her life depended on an amount they spent in a single day. Tachukwu got a designer suit flown in from abroad. Chisholm couldn't even get Panadol without paying for it herself. At night, she lay awake, counting the days left in her hands like sand slipping through fingers. But she refused to cry in front of them. She stopped asking for help. Instead, she started writing more, working more, saving every coin. Not just to live, but to leave something behind. Something they wouldn't control. Something they wouldn't expect. She wasn't going to beg them anymore. Not for love. Not for life. Not for anything. They had made it clear she didn't matter. But if they wouldn't fight for her life, she would, on her own terms. With the little time she had left, Chisholm decided she wasn't going to die quietly. She was going to make sure they remembered her. After her parents rejected her plea for help, something inside Chisholm shifted. The pain was still there, but it no longer broke her. It sharpened her. She knew the clock was ticking, so she began to prepare, not just for death, but for truth. Quietly, she started writing down everything. Every moment of neglect, every insult, every time they ignored her cries for help, she turned them into words. She kept a small notebook hidden under her mattress, and every night she added to it. No one knew. She started recording voice notes on her old phone. Some were just her thoughts, others were messages for the future. Raw, emotional, and honest. She spoke to the little girls who would one day feel like she did, invisible, unwanted. She told them they mattered, that they were not mistakes. And most importantly, she told them not to give up. One day, she reached out to someone she had worked for in the past, a female lawyer from an NGO who once hired Chisholm to write articles for women's rights. Chisholm didn't explain much, just said she needed help with something important. The woman remembered her kindness and talent and agreed without hesitation. Through her, Chisholm found someone who helped her draft a legal will. The lawyer never asked for payment. She said, "You've helped others quietly. Let me help you now." Chisholm used a different name in the documents. She didn't want her parents to know anything until the time was right. She left clear instructions. Where her small savings should go, who should receive her freelance accounts, what should happen to her laptop, her writings, and most importantly, how her story should be told. She named her only real friend, Ngozi, as the person to carry out her wishes. Every detail was planned. She wanted her voice to speak even when she was gone. Not out of revenge, but so the truth could breathe. So other girls like her would know they weren't alone. She didn't have wealth, but she had words, and she knew how powerful they could be. Chisholm didn't want a big funeral or fake tears. She wanted impact, so she kept living her quiet life, working, writing, smiling when needed, and hiding everything beneath the surface. While her parents planned weddings and ignored her existence, she was planning something they could never silence, her truth.
Sionun, Stvigun, Snechtarikidun, Madvosh the Sush, Murwamser and Erthig, that's it, said Nimaster for the Flyams Mazish, Honegane, and Upskitsalba, Gakbuckling is Zudasni, Gaberby bombs to the world, or Noil Faust, Ganizorn, General Bat, Magde Mazishrias Nelly, Watson Dash, Nerfully Remoter, he's wouldn't build no market sarker. So I had her voting against this and the share of me that was pushed. Her ways and it's near he had her members knowing it, skin this music.
The video was less than a minute, but it held everything, her spirit, her strength, her silent goodbye. That night, Chisholm sat up late, writing more letters. Her body ached more than usual. Her hands shook slightly, but she continued. She didn't want to waste any day. She knew her time was running out. The tiredness wasn't just from lack of sleep anymore. It was her body slowly shutting down. She started coughing more. Breathing became harder. Even walking to the kitchen felt like climbing a hill. But she kept smiling for Ngozi. She didn't want pity. She just wanted the world to see that even when no one clapped for her, she still danced. That even when no one celebrated her life, she still made it count. That birthday video would later become more than just a memory. It would become a symbol. At the time, they didn't know it would be her last. Chisholm didn't say it out loud, but Ngozi felt it. The room felt heavier. The air was different. Still, they laughed that day, even if just for a little while. Chisholm gave her all, even when she had nothing left. And the world would soon see that single moment of light before the dark. Chisholm passed away quietly in her sleep. No hospital bed. No family holding her hand. Just the silence of her small room, a worn blanket, and a body that had fought too long. Ngozi was the first to find her. She had knocked that morning like usual, holding a bowl of hot tea, but there was no answer. When she opened the door, the stillness inside said everything. The news spread quickly. Her parents came home in a rush, not out of grief, but shock. Not because they missed her, but because death always brings questions. At first, they stood by her body, whispering and pointing. Then came the tears, but only when others were watching. Neighbors gathered, some weeping softly. Ebra wailed loudly, falling to the floor. Chuka shouted prayers over her, calling her my daughter, like he hadn't ignored her for years. The funeral was arranged quickly. They chose a white lace dress she never liked. Her name was printed on a simple banner. A few pictures were placed on a table, none recent. Ngozi offered to speak, but the family refused. They didn't want anyone too emotional ruining their perfect performance. At the burial, Ebra sobbed for the cameras. Tchukwu gave a speech that sounded written by someone else. They spoke of her quiet strength and brave heart, words they had never said to her when she was alive. But behind all the drama, the truth peeked through. While people mourned sincerely, her parents started asking strange questions. First quietly, then openly. Did she have any money saved? Where was she working again? Did she leave a will? They asked Ngozi, the lawyer, even the pastor. Not about her dreams or her suffering, but about assets. About property. About passwords. They searched her room the night after the burial, opening drawers, checking under the bed, flipping through notebooks. They found nothing. They didn't know about the hidden bank account, the voice notes, the letters, the will stored safely with the lawyer Chisholm trusted. All they saw was a daughter who had died and possibly left something behind, something they now felt entitled to. But they had no idea what was coming. As they dug through her things, trying to find coins in a life they had devalued, the seed Chisholm planted was already growing. Her death wasn't the end. It was the start of a truth they couldn't control. And the story they thought they'd buried was just beginning to rise. At the lawyer's office, Ebra and Chuka walked in dressed in fine clothes, pretending to be heartbroken parents. They greeted everyone with forced smiles, shaking hands, whispering prayers. But their eyes kept darting around the room. They weren't there for closure. They were there for gain. They believed Chisholm must have left something behind. Money, property, or maybe savings from her online work. They sat in the front row, holding hands like everything was normal. The lawyer, a calm woman with tired eyes, walked in holding a file. She looked at them briefly before sitting down. "Before we begin," she said, Chisholm left a message. She wanted it to be played during the reading. A staff member pressed play on a small speaker. Chisholm's voice filled the room, soft but steady. "If you're hearing this, then I'm no longer here. And if my parents are in this room, I want you to know something. You let me die. You turned your backs on me when all I asked for was help. But this is not for you. This is for the girls like me who still want to live. The room froze. No one moved. Ebra's smile dropped. Chuka shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The lawyer paused, letting the silence carry the weight of Chisholm's words. Then she opened the envelope and began reading the will. Every line revealed just how much Chisholm had planned. She left nothing to her parents. Not a single item. Not a single coin. Instead, she gave all her savings, every naira she had earned from years of secret freelancing, to a trust fund. That fund would support sick, abandoned, and neglected girls across the country. She named it after herself, the Chisholm Hope Fund. Her laptop, her written works, her video diaries, everything was handed over to Ngozi, the one person who had stood by her. Ngozi would manage the trust with the help of the same lawyer who sat before them now. Ebra tried to speak, but no words came out. Chuka clenched his jaw. There was no room for arguments. Everything was legally sound, witnessed, recorded, protected. Chisholm had left nothing to chance. The people in the room stared at the parents, now exposed. The masks had fallen. What they thought would be their reward turned into their shame. Chisholm's voice may have stopped, but her truth had just begun to echo. After the video ended and the lawyer read the will, everyone sat in silence. But the next part shocked even those who thought they knew Chisholm's story. She had not only left her freelance earnings behind, she had also received a secret $20,000 inheritance from an international client. Years ago, Chisholm had helped a woman abroad with a sensitive writing project. The woman, moved by Chisholm's work and story, promised to support her one day. True to her word, she left Chisholm that money in her own will, just months before Chisholm's death. Chisholm never touched the money. Instead, she included it in her own plans. Every naira from her freelancing, every dollar from that unexpected gift, and the full rights to her unpublished writings, journals, and voice recordings. All of it was placed in a single trust fund. She named it the Chisholm Hope Fund. Ngozi, the girl who once brought her a cupcake and stood by her when no one else did, was appointed to run it. She would manage the funds, publish Chisholm's story, and use the resources to help abandoned, sick, and neglected girls all over Nigeria. From medical support to school fees to shelter, the trust would be a home for girls like Chisholm who were never given a chance to live. Everything was legally bound. No one could touch it, not even Chisholm's family. Her parents sat frozen in disbelief. Ebra leaned forward and whispered to the lawyer, "There must be a mistake." But the lawyer didn't respond. It was all in black and white. Chisholm's wishes were clear, her voice loud even in absence. Ngozi wiped silent tears as she received the documents. She never knew how deeply Chisholm had trusted her. But now, the responsibility was hers, to make sure her friend's story wasn't just remembered but used to change lives. The irony was sharp. The parents who once asked, "What has she done with her life?" now realized just how much she had built in secret. Chisholm hadn't just earned money. She had created a legacy. One that wouldn't fade after a few tears. One that would grow stronger with every girl it helped. Her parents left the office empty-handed. Not just without money, but without honor. The daughter they thought was weak had become something powerful. She didn't leave her wealth to the people who gave her pain. She left it to those who still had hope. NGOs began reaching out to the Chisholm Hope Fund. Donations poured in from within Nigeria and abroad. Women's groups offered to partner. A hospital offered free yearly checkups for girls under the fund. Everyone wanted to be part of what Chisholm started. They saw her not just as a girl who was abandoned, but as a leader who created change even in silence. But not everyone was praised. As her story spread, the truth about her family came out too. People dug up photos, comments, and background details. It didn't take long before the public turned on Ebra and Chuka. They were exposed, not just as parents who ignored their daughter's pain, but who also tried to claim her things after her death. Memes flooded the internet. Videos mocked their fake tears at the funeral. They became the symbol of everything wrong with how society treats vulnerable girls. A popular journalist visited Ngozi for an interview. Sitting in Chisholm's tiny room, still untouched, Ngozi shared details no one had heard. She told the world how Chisholm worked through pain, wrote for others, taught herself skills, and gave away everything she earned. The cameras captured the drawings on the wall, the laptop she used, and the very notebook where her dreams were written. Chisholm's story wasn't buried with her. It was just being born. Through pain, she built a voice that couldn't be silenced. And now that voice was changing lives. NGOs began reaching out to the Chisholm Hope Fund. Donations poured in from within Nigeria and abroad. Women's groups offered to partner. A hospital offered free yearly checkups for girls under the fund. Everyone wanted to be part of what Chisholm started. They saw her not just as a girl who was abandoned, but as a leader who created change even in silence. But not everyone was praised. As her story spread, the truth about her family came out too. People dug up photos, comments, and background details. It didn't take long before the public turned on Ebra and Chuka. They were exposed, not just as parents who ignored their daughter's pain, but who also tried to claim her things after her death. Memes flooded the internet. Videos mocked their fake tears at the funeral. They became the symbol of everything wrong with how society treats vulnerable girls. A popular journalist visited Ngozi for an interview. Sitting in Chisholm's tiny room, still untouched, Ngozi shared details no one had heard. She told the world how Chisholm worked through pain, wrote for others, taught herself skills, and gave away everything she earned. The cameras captured the drawings on the wall, the laptop she used, and the very notebook where her dreams were written. Chisholm's story wasn't buried with her. It was just being born. Through pain, she built a voice that couldn't be silenced. And now that voice was changing lives. Months passed, but Chisholm's name never faded. What started as a video soon became a movement. With donations pouring in and support from people across the world, Ngozi and the lawyer worked tirelessly to build something real, something Chisholm had only dreamed of. In the heart of Enugu, on a quiet street once forgotten by the city, a new building rose. Clean walls, bright windows, soft beds. A safe place for girls who had been cast aside, just like Chisholm once was. The sign above the gate read, "The Chisholm Foundation." It was simple yet powerful. Inside, laughter replaced silence. Young girls with tired eyes and heavy hearts found warmth, care, and education. Doctors came in weekly. Tutors volunteered. And Ngozi stayed close, watching over them like a big sister. She used Chisholm's notes as a guide, her ideas, her writings, even her drawings. Every corner of the foundation carried a part of her. But the most powerful thing was the mural. Painted across the main wall of the common room was a portrait of Chisholm, smiling, eyes full of light, a book in her hand. Beside it were the words she wrote in one of her last letters. "Even if they don't love you, leave something that loves others." Those words became the heart of the foundation. Girls repeated them like a prayer. Volunteers wore it printed on shirts. Schools invited Ngozi to speak about Chisholm's story. Newspapers called her the girl who gave everything. She had no riches, no big family name, but her heart had left behind more than many ever would. Her parents, now silent and ashamed, never dared visit the place. They were erased from the narrative they once tried to control. In every interview, every article, it was Chisholm and the girls she chose. Her name no longer belonged to pain. It now stood for hope. People who never met her felt connected. Some named their daughters after her. Others started similar centers in other cities. The foundation grew beyond Enugu, beyond Nigeria, carried by the same quiet fire that once burned in a forgotten room. Chisholm was gone, but she had never been louder. Her voice echoed in every saved life, every healed wound, every smile from a girl who once thought she had no place. Her story became a symbol of quiet resistance, of strength built in silence, and of light born in the darkest corners. Her legacy didn't end. It had only just begun.